Welcome back to GOODER Stories where strategy meets heart. I'm Gail Hataitham, founder of GOODER Creative Studio, where we help nonprofits and purpose-driven brands turn their values into visuals and their stories into action. Every other week, I sit down with change makers from across Canada's nonprofit world to explore how marketing can move missions forward. This podcast is here to help you share your story with more clarity, creativity, and confidence. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Amanda Bishop, founder of the Mindful Appetite, a Calgary-based nonprofit that's changing how we think about food waste. They rescue and upcycle surplus food into meals and products for the community while providing accessible food programming led by local chefs. Amanda's background is in Calgary's food sector. She worked as city coordinator for the Leftovers Foundation doing food rescue, then moved to Fresh Roots, helping bring mobile fresh food markets to communities and indigenous reserves. Through her work experience, she got a front row seat to how much food goes unused and how many people still go hungry. With food insecurity rising and nearly 50% of Canada's food being wasted annually, Amanda saw the need for operations that could process, package, and extend food longevity. This insight drove her to start the Mindful Appetite to bridge the gap between food waste and food insecurity. In this conversation, we'll talk about how she built a brand and mission from scratch, how she's using education and upcycle food products to spark change, and what it really takes to get noticed when you're starting small but thinking big. Let's dive in. Hi, Amanda. How are you
Hi,
doing
Gail.
today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm so excited to have you here. So, Amanda, can you tell us what was the turning point that made you decide to launch the Mindful Appetite? And how did you shape its voice and mission?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me here today, Gail. This is my very first ever podcast, so I hope I can do some due diligence to myself and the mindful appetite. But the turning point, honestly, having worked in the food sector and in the nonprofit sector for the past over 2 years, about, I would say, I think the biggest turning point for me was in realizing, even though, at least on the Calgary level, I can't speak to other cities, but I do think that across Canada, they're probably seeing similar issues, is even though that there are plenty of organizations that are on the ground and attempting to tackle food insecurity, rescuing good food from going to the landfill, and we need all of those organizations, that still food insecurity statistics were on the rise across the nation, which identified to me that there were gaps that needed to be filled. So the turning point in starting the Mindful Appetite was in recognizing that even though the stats were on the rise and we had good organizations on the ground doing good work, was that more was needed to be done, in the sense that we needed all hands on deck to tackle a really complicated uh, and multi-pronged problem. And not to say that my organization is going to necessarily fill that gap, but I think that we need a bunch of different folks and organizations and perspectives on the ground to tackling both the amount of food surplus and waste that's happening and food insecurity. And the turning point being too was just that we have these two problems that are very intertwined, and how can we make a bridge between food insecurity and food surplus. And so the Mindful Appetite was born to hopefully try to address some of that gap.
I think it's such a great idea. And
Thank
like you said, like you see the gap, and I think a lot of people recognize that too. And it's not gonna be a single-handed job to close that gap for sure.
you. 100%. Like, even thinking that to put that problem on one organization's shoulders to completely tackle and take away both food insecurity and like the issue of food waste management and food surplus, that's ridiculous, because it's such a complicated problem that we need we need a team of organizations, we need the community as a whole to step up and say, hey, we're going to try to tackle this from multiple different angles. And like we see in the climate world too, there are so many organizations that are on the ground, each contributing their portion of the pie to tackling a major problem. And so the Mindful Appetite really is just a small sliver of that. And we're really fortunate and blessed to be able to help to tackle this problem, but I don't think like we can't do it alone. So we exist to try to do our part and make a difference in this big problem.
Absolutely. So, what lessons did you take from your experience working in the other nonprofits that you're now applying to the mindful appetite?
I think, yeah, that's a good question because I've learned a lot. And I think kind of bridging into what I was just saying before is like this lesson that one organization alone cannot be held responsible for tackling such a massive, and honestly they're two very separate issues, like in the sense of tackling food security on its own and then tackling the issue that we have currently across Canada where there is so much food surplus, food waste happening. And again, not pointing any fingers at anyone, like this is a product of the system in which we all have contributed, but that no organization on its own should be held responsible for tackling these massive issues. I draw a lot of parallels to like what we see in the climate world because the climate world is also a very complicated issue. There's not like a single organization that's responsible for tackling that problem. And then this kind of lesson I think can be applied to like any really complex problem, where it be homelessness, addictions, treatments, that kind of thing. So that would be the biggest lesson. And I think that there is like a bridging into that is the lesson that there is space for creativity and solutions. And so we need a community-based approach and we need all hands on deck to solving these complicated problems, that we can't simply just rule out and say, nope, there's already an organization that's doing food, like rescuing good food and giving back to the community. Well, if that's the case, then we probably, and if that was the simplest thing and all we needed done, then we shouldn't be seeing these higher numbers of food insecurity and higher visits to the food bank. So really the biggest lesson being it's an all hands on deck situation. There's room for creativity. There's room for curiosity. There's room to try to understand what those gaps are in the current food system and in tackling food insecurity, and how we can be better as a society and be more collaborative across organizations to tackling these issues. And I think that's the biggest lesson that I've learned. And I think I've learned that even before coming into the food sector and having like been volunteering in the climate sector as well, because there's a lot of interesting parallels in both worlds.
Yeah, I think it's about partnership and collaboration, right? It's not called competition. Like you guys are tackling the same thing, the same cause, join force and make it stronger.
Yeah, that's the hope is um I sense like, yeah, there's this competition, or there could be perceived this competition like, oh, wanting to be the best. And I think from my perspective, that's never been something for why the mindful appetite has come into existence. It's not to be the best. It's literally to recognize that there's a problem and we offer what may be or may not be, we'll find out soon enough, a viable solution to help tackle like a sliver of this pie. There's still so much that needs to be done. And so really, like, I think looking at it from like, we're just here to try to offer a part of the solution as opposed to being the best or something. But I do think that sometimes we do get caught up in that because like as an organization, because you want to get recognized for the good work that you're doing, right? As we all do. But yeah, being more collaborative and saying like, I can help in this regard, this organization can help in this regard. And then really when we all band together, I think that's when the community really benefits. So that's what is one of the biggest reasons why the Mindful Appetite was started too, is to really help with the collaboration piece and bridging the gaps between a bunch of different communities and hopefully creating some really good change.
Totally on that. Totally supporting you.
Thank you.
So you kind of focusing on both food rescue and the education part. Like what is the main focus for you? And who are you trying to target or you trying to reach?
I think from my perspective, food waste and education are kind of like this. We can't have one. We could actually, you know what? We could have food waste management without the education piece, but I think change doesn't happen without there being an educational component to it, because people have to learn about what the problem is in order to understand what the solution is and how to tackle it per se. So I think that really the whole target is, I would put them together as being like food rescue or food waste and then education. And I think that is a multi-pronged approach. So looking at businesses and how we speak with businesses in relation to the food waste, and really the educational piece there is a lot of the times for them, maybe less so now that it's becoming a little bit more public knowledge about how high the rates of food insecurity are, but educating on food insecurity. And sometimes, depending on the organization and how corporate it is, the people at the top that are making, the ordering decisions and whatnot may not be as in the loop as the people on the ground that are dealing with the food and seeing like, okay, we're actually like throwing out a whole bunch of food and there are opportunities here, but they're working their job and just doing what they're told, right? Not to say that anyone's doing anything wrong. They're not. They're just doing the work. But that communication and that education that comes, like speaking with the people at the top to the people all the way on the bottom, like working with the food, and then to the community and saying the education piece there. And I think this is like where it becomes a two-way street, is really we have a solution that we think is like something that's potentially viable, in offering food programming based on the food surplus, also offering products from upcycled food surplus, but really getting community feedback and saying, hey, is this actually of benefit to you folks, or is this not? And are we like moving in the right direction here for the best interests of the community? And so really learning from them and learning their needs. And so I really think that the two things are really intertwined, and it's really hard to like separate out that edge. So I guess to answer your question, then it's probably the education piece, but that they're so intertwined, because that's like the whole topic of the education is just on how we manage our current food and how we go about better using it for the benefit of the community, but also benefit of the businesses too, because the businesses are ultimately the ones that are really paying more to purchase it. And then if it's not purchased by customers, what do they do with it afterward? And so I think educating them on what the mindful appetite can offer in addition to that. So yeah, they're very tied essentially.
Thank you. So, like you mentioned, you work with everyone from individual donors to food distributors to community partners, like so many groups, right? How do you adapt your communication approach for different groups?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like getting an understanding of what their understanding is, and then we can tailor our communications accordingly. So if we're speaking with a business owner, to be honest, a lot of the time, like I'd say, business talks business. I understand that, and same with Mindful Appetite, we're a business as well. We want to see that business do well. We want to see the business make money and be profitable, so that way they can go home and feed their families as well. So speaking with them from that lens of being like, we don't want to add cost to your current operation. We would actually rather speak about how we can be of benefit and collaborate with your food business in whatever food waste management strategy may be a fit for within your business. And then conversely, like when we speak with community members, in particular as it relates to the food programming that we will be launching fairly soon, and we're really excited about that. We're going to be able to find out from them, is this something that the community benefits from? Is it something that they learn something from? Like, what are their expectations somewhat from us? And maybe we end up pivoting and adapting because of that. So that's like kind of still a bit of a question mark, that piece, but we tailor our communications more so to being curious about how we can fit the needs of the community. And then like flip side, like to customers who are purchasing some of our upcycled product and allowing us to have a revenue stream as a nonprofit social enterprise. Really, our customers, like, do they jive with the products that we offer and that we're serving, or do we need to adapt them? So I think the communications are always like, the theme of it all is really understanding each individual person, their background, their knowledge. Like, do they even know food waste is an issue at this point in time? It is quite a popular topic. So I think most people, no matter who you speak to, they're kind of at this point like, we really don't like food waste. This is what we try to do to tackle it. But then thinking about it from beyond an individualistic standpoint is really where our communications, I think, are then a little bit more tailored to, okay, how can we help your business? How can we help the community? And then how can we make sure that customers are satisfied with the products that they're purchasing too from us?
So what's one challenge you didn't expect when starting the mindful appetite, and how have you learned to handle that?
That's also a very good question because I struggled with this one, to be honest with you, because I was like, I think I've been in the space long enough to understand that things take time. And as one person, even though there's a team of folks behind me, it's like you have to be gentle on yourself to know that you can only do so much. And your solution only goes as far as your energy levels, and everybody has the same amount of time in a day. But I think the biggest challenge, honestly, in reflecting a little bit more on this question, was not realizing and learning about all of the liability pieces that go into starting a nonprofit, but also a food-based operation. It's a bit different than just simply providing like cooking classes so people can come in and watch or something like that. Like, we're going to have people actually participating and getting their hands dirty and working with the food and stuff like that. And so with that comes a lot of liability pieces that I've since learned about that I had no idea in starting this organization, that we need to make sure that everybody was going to be safe, be abiding by like this one isn't a shocker, but making sure that we abide by AHS food safe handling. But I guess the other piece leading into insurance was that being a mobile operation at this point, so it's such that we do have some commercial kitchen spaces that have been generously donated to us for the purposes of producing our upcycled products, at which we are licensed to do that. This added element of being mobile in where we host the classes was another piece to add to that liability insurance coverage, and making sure that that's really well communicated with the insurance provider, and making sure that that liability insurance could follow us no matter where we go, and what that kind of looks like, and making sure we had the right coverage for folks. And then another added challenge, I guess, like speaking to just like having, like, we're so grateful for those folks that provided us with the commercial kitchen space. However, it is just an added hurdle of not having our own space, because in borrowing other people's space, we do have to be and want to be mindful and respectful of the space, not overstepping our welcome or what we store, how often we're there, and also with having guests outside of myself as like the trusted individual to come in and do the work, how that is then perceived and discussed and everything like that. So I think that's another added challenge that just adds other layers of things that we have to think about when we're planning out our activities. However, on the flip side, I will say, like, instead of a challenge, something that has surprised me in starting the mindful appetite, with which I am exceptionally grateful for, has been the receptivity of the community. Like, honestly, I'm so shocked, surprised, and just so, like, it makes me sentimental to think about how willing people are to want to help with something like this, and the connections that have been made in such a short period of time just by putting this idea out there. And I think that shows the willingness of the community, but them wanting to be involved as a part of the solution to the problem. And I think that that's just amazing. It's amazing that I get to reap the benefits of having those connections with the amazing individuals. And so I just want to give a special shout out to all of those individuals who have been supportive from the get-go. So not a challenge, but on the bright side of things, like, that's been an unexpected outcome of starting the mindful appetite. So really, really grateful. And yeah, I'm just, the community, it does wonders.
Well, I think that says a lot about you personally and what you're doing, because you've got something good going. That's why everyone wants to support you. I know that you take that in like really gracefully, and I can see how it will grow and it will keep growing. Everything is hard when you start from one person, but there's a village, there's a community behind you for sure.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for you.
Thank you. And that extends to you, Gail, because like you are one of those connections that was made in a very short period of time, which landed to this episode of the podcast. And I think it just goes to show like when people have ideas on how to tackle like a small portion, it shouldn't be something that we all hold in. This is something that even you're doing to contribute to this part of this problem and part of what we're trying to achieve. I hate talking about the problem. I rather say like the solution. We're all part of the
Mhm.
solution. And so I think that putting it out there always comes from a very vulnerable place as an individual and being like, "Ooh, I think I have an idea that could maybe make a difference." I don't know. It could maybe make a difference, but it's the community who bounces back and is like pushing you back up and saying, "Oh yeah, we'll prop you." And so that on its own is just incredible. And it speaks numbers to the power of community. You never know the connections that'll be made. So, and yeah, I'm super grateful that that led us to connect.
Yeah, exactly. I'm grateful too. So, so I know that food waste education is huge for you. So what have you found that is actually working to get people to pay attention and learn?
I feel like people are actually really open at this point in time, and you don't have to really push too hard. A lot of people, at least, so from a lot of the tablings that we've done through a variety of different markets and just chatting with individuals off the street who are coming to visit either the market or just passerbys, a lot of the resounding sentiments are food waste. I hate that. This is everything that I try to do to prevent that. So people are already informed and wanting to do their part. So I think that that's awesome. We don't really have to encourage folks. The fact that it's not like a blame game of like who is doing the wrong per se, but really it's the education is centers more so around like the food waste is a result of the system that we're in because of us wanting to have beautiful, perfect produce accessible to all of the seasonal that is no longer seasonal fruits and vegetables. And so we've all like contributed to that, and businesses have had to respond to that. And so really like what can we do with the system now that we're kind of in it? And we could revamp the system, but honestly, instead of doing that massive change, really educating, okay, what can we do with the excess food and how can we get the community involved? And I think community, like I said, is really receptive already to that. It's just getting some of the businesses more so on board and really speaking their language about how is this going to benefit them, especially from a cost saving standpoint, as opposed to costing them more money. Yeah, hopefully that somewhat answers that question.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's hopeful to hear that most people are already aware of that and want to be a part of
Yeah.
it. Right? That's awesome. So like obviously starting out, you probably don't have a huge marketing budget.
No.
So so what's been your biggest hack for getting noticed?
I think one of the things, to be honest, is just getting out there and talking to people. Really, the mindful appetite has pushed me outside my comfort zone. And I've lived outside my comfort zone for months now doing this. Even if you're not ready, you got to go and tell people. So you always got to have your little business pitch. It's not really a pitch, it's more so trying to connect with individuals and say, hey, like this is something that a project really that I'm working on. And a lot of people are actually quite intrigued by it, which is fascinating and lovely and interesting. But I think word of mouth is really big. I also think just showing up at community events and having an openness to learning what others are doing, how you can collaborate with others, that kind of thing. And then social media obviously plays a bit of a role, but like you said, we don't have a budget for marketing, so it's a little haphazard. We do what we can when we can, but we do encourage people to engage with us on our social media. So we're currently present on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter/X. I have a horrendous TikTok account, which I have no problem telling people I've given up because I am not of that generation. So if there's anyone listening on this podcast that would love to lend a hand and help helping with that, we would be immensely grateful for any support on the TikTok. And then we also have a website which yours truly built, so it's not the best, but it does its job. In essence, it provides us a little bit of presence to show that we are an entity. We post our events, meaning our pop-ups that we have, and soon to be our workshops that we're going to be hosting come the summer. Super excited for that. But really, I find one of the most powerful things is just talking to individuals. So I do try to get out to some networking events to let folks know that we exist. Should also say we do have a newsletter, but it's because our capacity is, is limited. It only comes out maybe once a month or every 2 months. So we promise that we don't spam your email because, to be honest with you, we don't have as much time to devote to that as much as I wish that I had, because I do like connecting with the community through newsletters as well and sharing successes, because a lot of the time it's because of them that we're able to do the things that we're doing. And so it's good to highlight and give thanks back to the community and the businesses too. But yeah, that would be our strategies at this point in time. Limited, but I still think some of the most powerful things are the word of mouth and getting on the ground, showing your face, not being afraid to put yourself out there. Yeah, that would be what constitutes our marketing budget at this point in time.
No, I understand. I feel you. So how do you show your donors and volunteers that their contribution actually matters? And because you're working with both immediate problem like the food waste and also for like a long-term goal. How do you
Yeah.
communicate that?
At this point in time, we have an anonymous donor for produce upcycling, and I'm super grateful for that donor who has provided us with the capacity to learn about what produce is being discarded most often and what we can do to try to tackle that. To the community members who have donated to our cause through whether it be monetary donations through our Kickstarter campaign, or we had a Value Village fundraiser where we collected items and then we were able to donate that to Value Village and get paid out per pound, which was crazy. And the amount of items that people gave, it accumulated completely in our basement. And so I am so grateful for the folks that gave in that capacity, the folks that share and post about what we're doing, the folks who show up to our community booths, even just to say hi and to show support. Also, grant funders, too. I shouldn't forget those amazing folks that believe in our initiative so much so that they are willing to provide us funds to support our initiatives, is really like electronically providing thanks, in person providing thanks, really highlighting again and again that it's not a me thing. This is a result of the community coming together and saying, we believe in this enough that we're going to support XYZ. And I just want to make sure that people are like, hear that resounding. I think in the future, I would love to explore different options of actually having a sit down get together with a whole bunch of community folks and really giving back to the community. I think at this point in time, because we're so small, it's just a little bit of a stretch to be able to get that to happen. But just know that things are coming and we want to give back to the community because the community has given so much to us already. Every little contribution matters and we are just super grateful. So I think a lot of it at this point in time is just me being like, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking through what it's been like months in the making of getting this, maybe more like a year to getting this off the ground, and people staying by our side and believing in it, but really wanting to make sure that people feel like they're recognized for their contributions because we wouldn't be here without them.
Yeah, and I think along the way, as you go, people can see more of the effect or the cause that they contributing to how your mission is coming through and how it's expanding, how it's affecting, making the impact in the community.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think so because there is an appetite, and it is a very mindful appetite within the community for the mindful appetite's presence. And so I do think that the impact and whatever that might be, whether how it does, and to my viewpoint, I don't think it really matters because at like the extent of that impact or the longevity of the impact. We hope that we can make a long and strong impact in the community, but I think already there's such small wins and victories that we've had in getting the word out that we exist, what we're striving to do, and the community's response has been incredible. And so I think just that alone, the impact is like already insurmountable for what
True, yeah.
didn't, something that we were like not really sure if this is the right approach, the right business nonprofit to launch, but the community's receptivity has already been so strong that there's already impact. It's just not as maybe large as some of the other more established organizations. And so
Mhm.
I think I'm excited to see where it will go and how we can best work together within the community and with other organizations to really tackle these big complex problems, but we offer some really good solutions to it.
So, for our last question, what advice would you give to someone who is listening and feels inspired to start a nonprofit?
There's a whole bunch of resources that the government of Alberta puts out, and pretty clearly, mind you, I found it fairly clear. They have a website, and literally, if you just Google how to start a nonprofit in Alberta, and I'm assuming that the governments and like other, if there are any listeners for other provinces, would be similar, but the government of Alberta lays it out fairly nicely in a stepwise fashion, and I would just suggest that people go to that link, go through each step. Really, the biggest piece for starting a nonprofit is figuring out the structure of the nonprofit, whether it is actually a nonprofit organization, a public or a private nonprofit, or society, and depending on which one of those is a best fit for what you're looking to start. And so I would spend some time on the website, give it some thought, maybe check in with a few other nonprofits that inspire you and get to understand their structure and see if it is kind of similar to what you're envisioning for yours. And then go for it. Then start submitting some of the paperwork and the documents. And depending on that structure, will guide you in terms of next steps because the fees are a bit different for each one in terms of getting them set up. So that would be my best advice for getting started is checking out the government website and then reaching out to like-minded organizations or organizations that you're affiliated with and getting advice from them.
And I just want to add that was a great advice. And I want to add that maybe be really clear on like what the purpose of your
Definitely.
nonprofit, what's
Yeah,
your mission and who you're targeting or who you're serving and all that before you really start digging into the process.
definitely. And also, that doesn't have to stay the way that you'd envision from the beginning, because I think it can change over time. Keeping in mind, like you may have a set vision, like I had a set vision for this, and it's led into areas that I didn't totally envision having certain target audiences, and that's okay. So, having at least that clarity from the start and letting that guide you from your starting point, 100%. When we started, our target audience were going to be folks that would participate in workshops and community-based workshops, and that was it. The scope didn't broaden to customers that could purchase upcycled product because that wasn't even part of the overall vision of the organization in terms of the structure of the organization. So the social enterprise piece hadn't been considered at that point in time. So it's not like it deviated so much. It just like it got a little bit bigger in terms of the whole vision and who we're trying to hit. And because of that, the communications are slightly different depending on what audience that you're speaking with, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story and vision with us today, Amanda.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
So I love how the mindful appetite is bridging the gap between rest and nourishment and doing it in a way that's practical, purposeful, and rooted in community. So before you go, please tell us what's the best way for people to connect and support you.
For sure. We have a website, themindfulappetite.ca. We are also on several of the social medias, so Facebook, Instagram, X, or the old Twitter. We have a horrendous TikTok account, but you can connect with us by that way. And on our website, we have a list of events that lists our pop-up markets as well as our upcoming workshops. At this point in time, there is one listed, and it will soon be open for registration. So connect with us through there. On the website, we also have a newsletter and you can sign up for that too. And then if you ever want to reach out about any specific question or how to get more involved, just send us an email, and the email's on our website as well.
Good. So
Yeah.
if you are a change maker listening to this, remember every episode of GOODER Stories is here to help you move your mission forward through thoughtful and strategic communication. And if you're enjoying these conversations, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, or share the episode with someone else doing good work in the world. And that's a wrap on another GOODER story. Until next time, keep making stories worth sharing. Bye.
Bye.